In the room with you this morning is Eric Latif, CT Muga, our guest host, Wanjiru Gikonyo, the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Accountability. CT, let's begin the hour with the day's proverb.
You do not, if I must, you do not roast vegetables.
You do not roast vegetables.
Even Mheshimiwa was very wary about this proverb.
Wanjiru Mheshimiwa was supporting me.
Really?
Yes.
Huh? She just didn't have time to express her concerns.
But you don't roast vegetables, Wanjiru.
We agreed.
You can do it, yes, but...
You know, Wanjiru then went into technology, okay? There's this equipment which if you turn right and then left, and then you put something on the overpass,
No.
it just
My
roasts the
most
vegetable
significant statement.
quietly. And then she threw in potatoes, then she threw in carrots.
Then I threw in obsolete and finished the conversation. Waste of time. That is where I am. Stop
And
taking
she'll
me
tell us.
back.
The other one of you don't fly too close to the sun. But Jeff Bezos went.
He went.
Yesterday.
In fact,
And he came back.
That is the
And it's
point.
fine.
that's the point.
our the younger generation who are the future, us, we are on our way out, are being told to push those boundaries. Now here you are telling them to get back into a box
Did Jeff
that is in
Bezos
somebody's
use honey
imagination.
and feathers? No. Precisely. So when you talk about roasting potatoes, the reference...
CT. Next time I have to bring some roast potatoes, roast carrots.
Roast potatoes is okay.
And some roasted greens.
Come
And I'm
with
telling
roast sukuma wiki.
wiki and roast cabbages.
Sukuma wiki.
That's what
Sukuma
I
wiki
see.
choma.
Yes.
Aye.
It's a delicacy and it's very healthy. It manages to retain all the nutrients. It's healthier for you.
Okay.
Sawa basi.
So,
Welcome to our audience on KTN Home who join us now until the top of the hour. We are having a conversation today about debt and the rising cost of living. In the previous hour, we were talking to the chairperson of the National Assembly Committee on Finance and Planning, the Honorable Gladys Wanga. In this hour, we talked to an economist. This is Dr. Stephen Githae Njaramba, who is from the Department of Applied Economics at the Kenyatta University. He joins us via video link. Good morning, Dr. Njaramba.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Yes, I've heard you talk about roasting sukuma wiki.
Is that economical?
You're forgetting Wanjiru is from an area that we do all that.
We roast.
you roast vegetables.
Yes.
You roast sukuma wiki. Which area is this, Wanjiru?
Ati? Yes, Dr. Githae knows. I mean, Dr. Njaramba knows.
And you roast cabbages.
He knows that you can roast vegetables, that this proverb of yours is obsolete and it's just occupying our space, preventing
the
us
area
from
you come from,
discussing
I know you
important things.
drown vegetables.
They also drown meat.
We have two main extremes. We can cook with a lot of water, and also we have a position we cook without any water.
We roast, like roast ngwashe. It's the best thing.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Thank you for
Thank you
that
for
insight.
the support. You see, two against. Now we are even.
Now we're even.
Stop
Okay.
the rigging.
Public participation is expanding, bringing more stakeholders.
It is now working.
It's
Before
now
it
working.
was not working.
Dr. Njaramba, we are talking about the rising cost of living. You heard a bit of the conversation we were having earlier with Mheshimiwa Gladys Wanga, and talking about the finance bill, which then became the Finance Act, what Parliament has done then so far. But the issue of the pinch that's being felt by the ordinary mwananchi in terms of just eking out a living, and then knowing that they need to contribute taxes so that we can finance a government that is intent on spending 3.6 trillion shillings, part of it repaying some money that we borrowed, part of it continuing the development programs. It's heavy on the mwananchi. Do you agree?
Yes, I truly agree. The tax is quite heavy on the citizens, and based on the fact that, again, they don't have enough income to support that, I agree, it's quite heavy.
In fact, one of the questions we asked Mheshimiwa was, is Kenya pursuing the right fiscal policy, because it appears not to be working. The revenue-raising measures appear to be having the unintended effect of actually depressing tax collection. So are we on the right policy? And if not, what policy should we be pursuing?
Now, Wanjiru, you know that any functioning of public, and I base that once we talk about public sector, it's founded on some basic principles. One, what is the importance of taxes? Why should the government tax its citizens? So taxes, in most of the time, it's not meant to raise revenue. Fine, it does that, but it's not the main focus. Once we talk about taxes from the base, why they came up and to the position we are, one principle we must actually understand is that the government should not compete with the public when it comes to consumption. Because the moment now you tax more than what they remain with for purposes of expenditure, then you generally are competing. But the reason why government taxes the nation is mainly to perform three functions. One of them is to do what we call allocation. Two is to bring stabilization. And of course, the third one is to cause distribution, a redistribution of resources in the economy. I think we have over-concentrated on the first one, that there are functions, or there are what we may call public good, that the public itself, in form of market, cannot provide. And therefore, the government is called upon to provide, and therefore taxes the nation in order to provide. And these are goods like public roads. There are also goods that we call necessary good, and probably the government would not want them to the spot market, like hospital, like education, and of course some transfer payment to some member of the society who are disadvantaged. So in that case, I think the purposes of taxing the public in order to therefore spend has been relied upon. And we have forgotten the question of stabilization and redistribution. So for me, I think the principle has, we have to go back to the main principles of taxation. And therefore, redirect our attention that is the taxation really supporting productivity within the economy, and thereby bringing up and more of room for raising taxes. That, to me, is one of the main concerns.
So from what you're saying, present tax measures are actually competing with consumption. Can we conclude that, and that they are then also undermining the business environment? Maybe you could explain a little bit which of these tax measures you feel are doing this.
You know, once we are talking about public and government, let me put them into two ways. That we have public sector and we have private sector, where public sector now refers to the government. These two should not compete. Rather, they should complement one another. Where the private sector probably is going down, then it's strengthened by the public sector. But the moment now you find that the government is killing demand, I remember at the end of the day, the goods that are domestically produced have to be consumed domestically through private consumption. So private consumption is not a bad thing, because it is only that what is domestically produced then is able to sell out. Once the public has no power, then, or what we may say that the public has no disposable income, because a lot of the income then is taken over by the government, then you may find that what's being produced it becomes an inventory, or what cross over to the next period unsold. And producer then review their production such that then we have a continuous decline in production. Then once the taxes then goes to the government, and this I must actually put as a sad thing, you find that more than 80% of the budget then is just what we call recurrent expenditure. It is not something that then is used to strengthen further production. Then we really need of that money to move from private sector. And I always say private sector is efficient because it's able to allocate resources more efficiently, or in an area where there is more productivity, as you compare to public sector. So do we need resources really going from private sector to public sector where there is a lot of wastage and inefficiency? So in that case, for me, we are in a bad situation where government is actually removing a lot of resources, excess resources from private sector, and causing more unproductivity in the economy.
Dr. Njaramba, when you go with that argument, the private sector is more efficient than the public sector. Why then are we getting resources from the private sector to put in the public sector? You are heading the libertarian route, questioning why we need government then.
Exactly. In Kenya, remember, there is also the main basis why we need the government, which is a good thing. But is it living to its requirements?
Interesting. What about first of all, you make 2 points where you're saying government is taxing heavily, and that money, instead of going into development, is actually going into recurrent expenditure, which is inherently inefficient. It's also against the law. It's illegal. It's a violation of law. But if we follow the argument that more, development should be left in the hands of private sector, then are we then not saying we do away with social protection? Because the idea of having government collect these taxes is to ensure that basic social services are accessible to the wider section of the population, especially those who are not able to access those services through private means.
The other two principles, redistribution and stabilization.
No, Wanjiru, actually, I'm not saying that. The private sector should be taxed, and I have said that there are 3 aims of taxations. And we need to go back to the basic and say, if these resources are not doing that, like the social protection, and you're saying, and one of the social protection is, of course, affordable education to the poor. It is affordable health to the poor, those that cannot pay from their pocket. They need to be protected against these goods that we call merit goods, goods that are important, that whether the society has income or not, they have to access. So those ones is part of the investment if you are keen in the government, because as much as there is recurrent expenditure, we gauge by looking at how much is actually advocated to that to those functions. But I must tell you, Wanjiru, that in any financial year, I think for the last 3 years in government, you realize that about 400 billion Kenyan shillings of the fiscal budget is actually allocated to allowances. Allowances that is not part of the budget, not budget, but the principles of the budgeting. So now, under that, I say, this money, why should it be withdrawn from the public, whereby probably if we are talking about interest that was taxed and therefore went to be used by the government as allowances, this money could have been reinvested back to the economy and produced more employment. I'm talking about a situation where you withdraw money from the government, from private sector, and take it to members of parliament. I'm happy you had one. And they spend almost the entire budget in traveling, in fuel allowances, and in meal allowances, if I may say. And you even wonder, why then are we paying them? What is the purpose of the salary? So those are the area I'm talking about. But for social protection to the poor, of course, supporting business to expand and employ more, that one should be encouraged. And it is one of the purpose we are talking about for taxation.
Dr. Jaramba, let me ask you this question. If we do a sum total of all these allowances and all these privileges that we afford certain members of our society, as a factor of, say, our GDP, as a factor of our expenditure, is it an amount that really influences and affects us to the point where we can say it's a major contributor to the problems that we actually have financially?
Come again, sorry.
All these monies that we pay, the allowances,
The 400 billion.
yes, yes,
Yes. Okay.
yes, and you're saying
Well,
it amounts that annually, okay? The question I'm asking is, how significantly does it affect the situation that we're in? This 400 billion, when I know full well that the problems we have is in the trillions.
Of course, the trillion is made of the 400 billion as well.
Yes, it is.
So you realize that, of course, this is just one of the pointer of areas that we can say bring into a lot of waste. I was looking and answering to the question of waste of money that actually comes from what we would rather call more efficient sector. But I'm not saying that the sector private sector should not be taxed. But the moment the taxation then happens, it needs to be directed to more productive functions. So the 400 billion, if you look at it keenly, most of it is used to foreign expenditures. And of course, we would also say that the government is becoming one of the main consumer of foreign goods and services. And therefore, at the end of the day, you end up even offloading the income from domestic market to foreign market, a major problem we are seeing. So significantly, the activities by public sector has contributed to the problems we have.
The point I was trying to make actually is not in disputing the amounts, but I am disputing what I'm calling a symptom, because the 400 billion that we speak of, it is not the problem. The problem from an economic standpoint is how it is we effectively control the monies, or we manage the monies that we have. Because if 400 billion goes into all these extras, it means there are people who prefer to continue having it irrespective of what is happening, and that any measures we talk about, belts tightening, living frugally, all that is just talk. But it doesn't start there. Where it actually stops is when you look at these huge infrastructure projects that we keep talking about. And I have to ask the question, yes, they are good things, but do we actually need them now? And the way these projects are constructed, are they the best things that we could have done with that money now?
Is it the prudent financial management
Yes.
practice? Dr. Stephen Githae Njaramba is from the Department of Applied Economics at the University, or the Kenyatta University. He's joining us in this conversation, talking about debt, talking about the rising cost of living of Kenyans. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. This is the Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home, live streaming the show on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This and every morning, you have Eric Latif and CT Muga, and our guest host today and tomorrow and Friday is Wanjiru Gikonyo. Joining us on the line, Dr. Stephen Githae Njaramba from Kenyatta University's Department of Applied Economics. CT, before we went to the break, Dr. Njaramba had said something about the 40 billion, as an example, the 400 billion as an example. And you said, to you, that is a symptom of something else.
Yes. You see, what Dr. Njaramba presented is actually real. And if we are talking about tightening our belts, some of these things which I'm going to refer to as extras should actually be shaved off completely. However, I was saying, why I call it a symptom, I then took the discussion to some of the really huge infrastructure projects that are ongoing, and they seem to be increasing in addition to the Big Four agenda. And I was asking the question, if you look at our debt portfolio in the trillions, and you look at these projects which contribute to this debt, to the debt portfolio that we have, I was asking the question, are these projects, do they represent the best way we could be focusing our expenditure or our financial management? That was the question I was actually asking.
Dr. Njaramba.
Yes. I think once we need to redefine the word symptoms. Now, but from how you are bringing it out, that the projects that probably we're implementing could actually be causing these allowances that we are talking about. Before I come to that, I'm looking back at the Kibaki's period when he came in and became the president. And I think that time the finance minister, Mwelaria, in Treasury, he did something that I was in Treasury, so I'm able to notice some of the effects of the revenue measures that actually made the public to rely not with the new taxes, but with the taxes that were already being raised at that particular time. And I think one of the measures was to make sure that the wastages that were coming in were eliminated. One of it was we used to be paid what we were calling sitting allowance. Anytime you would go for a meeting, we were paid sitting or meeting allowance. And this used to be a lot of money. And the finance minister just struck that one off, just with a pronouncement that there is no reason why you should be paid, and that's why you already getting your salary for the same purpose. So it was removed. I remember that is the time that procurement officers, all of them were sent packing and requested to reapply because of the wastage that was going through the process. So, and one of the wastages was that, again, the allowance is attached, the pricing of the items. So you realize that a lot of wastage, a lot of loopholes were sealed, and then the money was that was collected in form of taxes were able to be redirected to projects. Now, one thing I would want to say about the project that we are having in Kenya, of course, there is a given law and the procedures that should be followed once we have to put up a project. And that's why public participation has been put in the Constitution. I agree with the city that the number of projects that we are implementing may not have actually gone through the legal procedures of identification and prioritization, such that then they end up being, let me call them emotional projects, populist kind of project. Somebody wake up, I don't want to put big four agendas, but I would want to understand what procedure was followed to come up with the big four agenda, and how different was it from the now from the Vision 2030 that was already in place. And I remember again, we also have a question of 522 projects that were in medium-term plan 1 that stalled and were not taken over by medium-term plan 2, with a lot of wastage. So if you look at that in that direction, then I would agree with the city that some of the projects that we are implementing could actually be cause of a lot of wastages that we have experienced.
How do we end up there then, Dr. Njaramba? Is it the political side, or is it experts who sit in the National Treasury? Because they're the ones who look at what to finance, what to prioritize. Is it those experts at the National Treasury who are missing the mark, or is it political pressure?
Now, I would want to tell you about those experts sitting in Treasury. I was there at one point, and I would say that they have no say. They implement the government of the day agenda, no matter how it comes up. And even if it is wrong, they have to find a way of making it right, because this one is direction. So they have no say. So if it comes and contradicts what was there before, they have in one way or another to make sure it looks as if it's legal. Now, political side on the other way, of course, and I say that I think the political side have really failed Kenyans. And I don't know how we Kenyans are going to make them accountable. Because Treasury, most of the time, which is the main arm of the government, fiscal government, that is supposed to be keenly checked by Parliament, which is our kind of the foresight body. But you have realized, and if you look at what Honorable Wanga was talking about, and you compare what she was talking, how she was talking before and how she is talking now, you can completely say that we have a problem. Because these people, at one point, he was critical of what the Treasury is doing. Now she's actually the one supporting it. So you can tell that there is a way they merge and converge and agree to swindle the Kenyans.
At what point does this happen?
But
Look,
that's
our
the
head
bit.
of
We
government
are being
today.
swindled. This tax increase, it's a swindle.
So, and that's why I'm coming back to the National Treasury and the officials in the National Treasury who are drawing a salary from taxpayers to do some work. Then you say that the influence is coming from the political heads.
Not
the
influence, direction.
The current direction influence from the political head. The political head is a former head of the National Treasury. The public servant head is a former head of the National Treasury.
You didn't
At what
understand
point?
what Dr.
Let me ask
Jaramba
my
said.
question.
Let
Let me ask my question. Then you can ask your
But he
question.
got it wrong.
You are getting my question wrong, and the question is not to you, it's to Dr. Njaramba. So let me ask Dr. Njaramba the question. At what point do you think the politicians are able to come out of the National Treasury, where they're heading and they're running the National Treasury, they move to the house on the hill, and their thinking changes? I always ask myself that question. Currently, our head of executive is a former Treasury minister. Our head of public service is a former boss of the Treasury.
We are together.
How do they derail? Where is the rail going wrong from CBD to State House?
Now, one thing I want to say, and I think this is true from my view, is that we make a big and a major assumption that the government of the day has the goodwill and any implementation that they are doing has the good intention to the public. The former CS, that time was a minister of finance, and of course the former PS, now of course head of public service. The way they were and the way they are, but At one point, I served them, of course. And I will say at times I also ask the same question you have. The issue of the civil servant, even when they are signing their contract, is that you cannot in any way contradict your senior. That amounts to insubordination. And of course that goes without saying. It's principles of any employment. You can't go against your employer or your boss, because the reason why they are the boss. And you cannot do anything other than to receive directions. So you cannot blame those civil servants in treasury, despite the fact that they are drawing salary. You will do something and you will agree with it, even when you know inside yourself it's headed in the wrong direction.
That is as plain as light daylight.
Let me now put the issue that I was raising, which is, you've said it right. At what point do your ethics come in? If you are serving there, Dr. Njaramba, and you know you are the one who's gone to school up to PhD level, you are an economist, you understand public finance management, you understand all those things, and then you see a political boss coming to tell you, you know what, Dr. Njaramba, what we need to do is we need to extend the Indian Ocean to reach Nairobi. At what point do your ethics come and tell you, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm quitting, go out there in the public and say, you know what's happening there? Be a whistleblower.
Please refer to the Masai Mara and you'll get the answer.
Listen, you can't keep passing the buck. You see, Honorable Wanga tried to pass the buck. Who was Honorable Wanga passing to? To the policy and to the loopholes in the law.
Yes.
Now you're trying to pass the buck to the technocrat.
I'm not.
At the end of
I'm
the
saying
day,
all
we
of us
have
have
to
a responsibility.
confront.
Take responsibility at your level. The political responsibility is glaring, it's clear, right? And that's why, for everybody to understand that the problem is at the political level, those who know, and these are the technocrats, need to make it clear to all of us, look, we are being given directions that are not taking the country in the right direction.
What are you saying? You're saying, it's like we're in a football match that is rigged against us. Remember the analogy that I
Yes.
brought in? Here we are as taxpayers paying illegal taxes because they are not even following the public finance management requirements.
Yes.
The administration of the day and the head of that administration
Yes.
is the one that drives the policy. That is what we are being told.
That's true.
The problem we have is that the oversight institution has then failed to work.
Yes.
So our heavy taxation is because of this rigged and failed system.
Yes.
We cannot then turn around and
Being
blame the
aided by
technocrats.
experts.
We can't then come and say all the technocrats have failed us. No,
There
it's our
is-
political
Actually,
leaders.
there is
There's
By the
error
way-
of
by the way,
omission
It's
and
one of-
commission.
one
If
of-
you sit back, Wanjiru,
In the hierarchy.
if you sit back and you implement what you feel is wrong and you don't raise a finger, then you are participating
You're
in it.
complicit.
What do they say where you come from, Dr. Njaramba and Wanjiru? There is no thief and...
And the look.
Does it?
And roasted vegetables.
And then look, that is not in the constitution. You can't prosecute that in law.
But you have to realize, you have to realize that at the end of the day, I think also Kenyans in general has failed the experts. Yeah, because I don't think they have a say, majority of them. I have one of the best person I thought was an economist at one point. But with the new constitution, that person was pushed out of treasury. So for me, I feel that we punish the expert and we punish those people that would, in my view, probably take the economy in a better direction. Those people that were able to develop the economic recovery strategy and drove it to success, have we taken time to understand where are they? What do we really reward? Even if you go to even medical side, there we have had people successfully treating, successfully operating, even separating twins in Kenya.
Yep.
Have we did the word that where are they? What are the rewards? Have we accounted them other than probably even pushing them out of the job? Because they are shining or they attempt to shine, they are thrown out.
This system rewards mediocrity. This system
Exactly.
does not accommodate any type of pushback or resistance. And the most tragic or most the long-term damage that the Jubilee administration will do to Kenya is removing expertise, weakening institutions. Because it's one thing to have bad governance, but when you weaken the institutions, it will take ages to recover. And so I completely agree with you, Dr. Jaramba. So what we are saying, cost of living, is because of failed Jubilee policies and weakened institutions.
Yep.
So we are in big trouble, because our last question was going to be, or one of our forward-looking questions is, what can we do? Or what needs to be done, Dr. Jaramba?
Dr. Jaramba, there's something that you've said that has got me thinking about this economist who was removed. Do I hear you to be saying that apart from just being a truly excellent economist, this was an individual who actually stood his ground and would say, no, we are not heading in that direction, this is what we need to do? Was he that sort of person?
I remember I'm still a government employee. And
it is a fair question which doesn't put you in danger.
I would want you to go back.
Yes.
Remember, we have a history, and let's not ignore history. It's a good tool to tell us how we are moving and where we went wrong. We had what we were calling Kibaki's government, if I may call it that way. It came in at a point when economy was even performing negatively in terms of economic growth. And then within a period of 2 years, they were able to reverse that, and to a point that the economy started performing. I think that for the first time since my life, I had seen a situation where a graduate from university could get to a job directly from school for the first time. I think it stopped again. Now, I look back and say, did the president or the cabinet itself manage that? And I realize, no. It is that the experts were given the leeway to guide the economy the way it should be. They were listened. They were given the opportunity to front their growth agenda. It was listened to, it was implemented, and therefore it works. So the work of political system, it is not actually even to guide the economy. I mean, not to give the policies required, but it's to give the opportunity to the experts and the policy makers that ground to think, to develop the growth models, and give the room for implementations. But now we have a system which is already aided by the public, myself and you, to do everything. I don't understand why the parliament is one that make a decision on how to collect the money, make the budget, and go ahead and again implement. What system in the world function like that of Kenya? Then how do they even oversight themselves? Political system is the one that decides how much taxation. That's why you hear Honorable Wanga is here telling us why the country needs to be taxed more. From where? They are not even having income. So in that case, they are there to collude and agree to squeeze further and squeeze dry and have the resources for them to spend. I think that should stop. So to answer Wanjiru's question, for me, we need to separate. Let the political side before a political decision. Let's have the policy maker making the policy, and let's have the technocrat implementing. I think that's my advice.
How do you compare the taxation policy of Kibaki administration, the fiscal policies of Kibaki administration and this administration?
The fiscal policy in Kibaki's administration were guided by reason, and more so had the right people under the political system. So what we have here, we have a system that is guided by politics. And remember, politicians also have their own interest to maximize on the what is coming to them. But we have given them all the room to do that. And therefore, they are maximizing their own welfare, not the public welfare. So for the Kibaki system has used the structure for the right thing. So that's how I compare the two.
If you look at how, and I think we have established here, and we've said it many times, our politicians have failed us. Those that we've elected to play the oversight role in Parliament, in the Senate, have failed us. And then those that we've given the responsibility to be in charge of the executive are also failing us. And then where do we head from here? And I'd like to say, I think where then we head and how we correct this is by one, empowering the citizens with information. So that when we feel the pinch that we are feeling currently, that in terms of our cost of living rising, we can directly pinpoint where the rain starts beating us and how we can buy umbrellas to shield ourselves from that rain. And to empower the public, information will need to come from those who have the information. And this is why I'm still getting back to the professionals, through the professional bodies, the professional associations, and then the civil society, those that are engaged and they get to know. How do you give the information to the public so that when we're being told that in the next government, if we elect you, you're going to lift us by the bottom and we shall be looking up, or another one, we shall empower villages and all, we have a way of interrogating that information. This is where ISPAC, for example, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, comes in. They are the experts on economics, on public finance management. The members of this profession are the ones who work in the treasury. They can channel their grievances through ISPAC. And civil society as well. If you get to engage with ISPAC and you get to get the information from the professional bodies, the Law Society of Kenya in terms of how we are structuring our laws and the others.
Yeah, the point you're making, it's not really about laws. It's about tax justice and tax accountability. And the fact that Kenyans are really bleeding under a system that's sucking them dry, and we are not pushing back. And the question is, how do we get Kenyans to push back? Because constitutionally, we have the power. The laws give us the power, but in actual fact, we are not exercising that power. So I think I don't know, Dr. Jaramba, what your thoughts on that? How do we get Kenyans to wake up and push back against unfair tax?
Yes, Wanjiru. In fact, and I agree with the sentiments that all of us are responsible of what we are or where we are. And therefore, this must come clear to the public through civil society. And of course, and at one point I was getting worried that civil society has gone silent on the problems that are happening in our economy compared to what was happening. You realize how civil society was strong during Kibaki's time. So in this case, then everybody, because at the end of the day, these politicians are the result of what we've been doing. We are the one who elect them. So let it be clear to us that where we are is because of our actions. And then get educated on how to make a better decision. Because the moment we start focusing on the productivity, the moment we stop worshipping individual with money and therefore putting them into the position of power without even questioning the source, so they will actually accumulate more because they believe that what us as Kenyans worship is money, not production. So I think civil society and of course the press has a lot of role to educate us and communicate to us the right thing. And of course the church included. I think also church has contributed and become political as well. in worshipping money. I think the main thing is that we no longer worship production. We no longer worship productivity. Rather, we worship money. And by the way, I want to just say this, that money should not be the head of the thing. It should not be the head. It should actually, money is a means. It should be seen as a means to something, not the end.
Not the end.
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Stephen Githae Njaramba, Public Policy Specialist from the Department of Applied Economics at Kenyatta University. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Have a good day.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.